Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallama ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Allahumma la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Allahumma 'allimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima tu'allimuna wa zidna min fadlika 'ilman innaka 'ala kulli shay'in qadir. ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Many thanks for the kind introduction, but I think I've been set up for an anticlimactic evening. Inshallah, I just want to share some very, very few and small remarks. I hope not to take too much of your time. And I'm happy after that to have any conversation that you'd like to have, and after that to have any songs as well that you'd like to have. Apparently there's singers here as well. Asim was right. The last time I was here in High Wycombe was in the year 2000. It was a very funny, if I tell you what it was like, so I can see you. It was an i'tikaf with Shaykh Muhammad al-Yaqubi. It was my first and only time that I've seen him physically. And in those days, I don't know if you guys know, but you know when the year 2000 was about to come, everyone was afraid the world was about to stop working. And so this was an i'tikaf in 1999 Ramadan. It was a 3-day i'tikaf in this mosque. And I've never in my life seen a mosque like it to today, a mosque like that for me. Because it was constantly alive with dhikr. There was so much dhikr happening in that masjid. There was a main tarawih, and then there was another tarawih that happened after 1 a.m. I don't know what exactly that was. And then we were doing lessons with Shaykh Yaqubi, we were doing hadith and we were doing shifa. And next door there was some hadra type of thing going on. And if there was any silence, a man would grab the microphone and start saying, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. It was like such a... And then after Fajr, we'd read Burda as part of the post-prayer dhikr. After Isha, there would be these other kind of adhkar that the Imam would lead. So to this day, I've never seen a masjid like that, as I remember it. So much alive with community and dhikr. And community is one of the last things I want to talk about, actually. And I remember a man was filming Shaykh Yaqubi reading the Shifa, and I could see the clock on his camcord, on his camera. And it was just about to strike midnight. We were about to enter the year 2000. And I was waiting for the camera to stop working and the lights to go out. But nothing happened. And then I thought it's the barakah of the Shifa and Shaykh Yaqubi and being in the masjid. But obviously, then I realized actually the world was actually all right. And maybe that still was the barakah of the Shifa and these majalis. So that was my last time in High Wycombe. Very, very fond memories. As Asim said, I've taken a bit of a funny journey in my own life. I might hint at it towards the end, which is since that time, since I was 17 really, I've been interested in traditional Islamic studies. And I've done various things over these last 20 years trying to pursue this interest. And the last 10 years, I've been focusing on thinking about what is Islamic law really all about. That led me to do some academic research and led me to being to a lectureship as well in Cambridge Muslim College. But I reached at the end of all of my conclusions, I decided that Islamic law ultimately is a vision for society. And unless we're in society building institutions that bring community together, as I want to hint at, then we're not really being true to the sacred law. The sacred law is not something in your mind, it's something that's meant to exist outside of yourself. Our job is to make it real. And so as an attempt to be true to that I've made this sort of jump into what you might call charity work. And I'll talk a little bit about what I've been up to. This particular Ramadan, we're talking about bidding farewell to it, but I've never had a Ramadan quite like it because I've decided to prioritize speaking to people about zakat and community. And so I've prioritized that over my normal, what I would have been doing with worship and prayers and other things. I'm not saying I wasn't praying, but the point is, it wasn't the same sort of level. So it was a very strange and different kind of Ramadan. But I felt it was my duty. And so I'll come back to why I felt that. And so it's a strange, I'm sitting here before you talking about Ramadan, which for me was a very different experience than it normally has been. But I'll start right from the top. I just have a few very small things to say. I don't think the topic really is bidding farewell to Ramadan. I think it's about building on Ramadan. Now, the Holy Quran, when it talks about what Ramadan is, which is only in one passage in the Holy Quran, which you would know in Surah Al-Baqarah. It says that this month represents two independent events which have coincided. You know, when almost like an eclipse, two things have coincided to match up. What are the two events? One is fasting, one is something to do with the Holy Quran. So when it comes to fasting, what the Holy Quran says is that fasting is a ritual that Allah has demanded from many communities before this one, and it was so that we could have a state of taqwa, or an awareness of Allah, or a consciousness of Allah, or a protecting ourselves from what displeases Allah. And then for this to happen, the Quran emphasizes a number. It says you have to fulfill the number. It says this twice in this passage. If you're sick and traveling, it's fine, but make sure you make up the number. So it's like a prescribed course for a particular purpose, and we have to do it. That's one thing. This is one event, that every year we need to have this prescribed course. But there's another event. The other event is the month that was chosen for the prescribed course is a month which has its own significance. And it's the month in which the Holy Quran was revealed. Scholars have different interpretations of what this means. Some say it means the first revelation came, and that's what it means, the Quran first came down. And some say it means that it's the coming down to the lower heaven. But the idea is the Quran's coming into this world is in this month. Why the coinciding? This is the question. Why was the month of fasting chosen to be the month of the Holy Quran? It's because of something which I want to also hint at in what I'll be saying. It's because that's how we are meant to approach the Holy Quran. We are meant to approach the Holy Quran in a state of turning away from this world, turning towards what is higher, and being a little bit weakened and needy. Need is the key to the Holy Book. And this is something of how revelation comes in the first place. Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam in the Holy Quran, before the Torah came to him, he was meant to leave his people, go to the mountain and observe 30 days of devotion. And then 10 more days were added to make it 40 days. And our ulama say this included fasting. So he went to a regime of preparing himself. And he already was Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, but he had to prepare himself in devotion, and then the book came to him. And our Master Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam was also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired him to leave his people and also go to the mountain and also be in a period of devotion, a period of preparing. And some ulama talk about fasting. The idea was it's turning away now. And it's a period of purification and devotion, and then he's prepared, and then the book comes. And so we in this month are reliving the events of revelation. And many of the sacred law points, as we'll be hinting at, is reliving great events and great moments of the various Anbiya and the Rusul, which have been combined in the teachings of our Prophet ﷺ, as I want to emphasize today. And so that's why this combination has come. It's for us to relive that approaching the Quran is not simply about reciting it. It's not simply about sitting down with it. It's about being prepared for it. And the preparation is not simply about how much you've studied. The preparation is about how you approach. And so this month of devotion, of waking up before Fajr, the routine, 30 days, which is not easy. It's not easy at all. You wake up early in the morning and you do your morning meal and you don't eat the whole day. If you pray these gatherings, if you have been staying till midnight in this place, somehow you have to go to work the next day, you haven't got your sleep. It's a whole disturbance of your entire way of being for the sake of an exercise of devotion. In this month, we will feel a connection with the Quran differently than we normally feel. We'll feel between us and the Quran, the barrier is a bit softer or a bit more opaque, or we can sense more, or we can feel more. That's the power of this month. That's what this month is training us. And this month doesn't need a farewell. It needs us to carry this learning on. And we carry on what we've taken and we build on it, and then we'll have another intense period again. These are the cycles. Just like the prayer has cycles. You prostrate and you stand up and you recite the Quran again, and then you prostrate again. and you stand up and recite the Quran, then you prostrate again. These are cycles in the sacred law. So think about this. The Ramadan is a particular kind of prostration. It's a particular kind of devotion and connection. And now we're going to experience and think about what this means to us as it unpacks. The Prophet ﷺ, how would the revelation come to him? It would come to him in an event. And they would talk about sweating. And they would talk about his body getting very, very heavy. And they would talk about, he would say, it's like ringing bells. Then he says, فَيَفْسِمُ عَنِّي فَأَفْهَمُ مَا يَقُولُ. Then he said it would pass and I would understand. And so similarly, this is an event. It's a time of different learnings and reflections. It's for us to now unpack that in what comes next and what comes in the next part of our journey going forwards. So that's all I'll say in the first part, that this month is about the Holy Quran and approaching it through need. And the key to the Quran is need. The emptier we are, the more it will fill us. And there's no secret to the Quran except for this. That's why the first manners of approaching the Quran is just about realizing how big it is and how small we are. Ya ayyuhan nasu antumul fuqara'u ila Allahi wallahu huwal ghaniyul hamid. O people, you are the needy. Allah is the rich. So just be empty. That's all. The whole sacred law is just be empty. It's really simple. It's not a big step. It's not a big event. It's just be empty. Everything is going to come. لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إن علينا جمعه وقرآنا. Allah says, don't hasten your tongue. Don't worry. It's on us. It's all on us. سنقرئك فلا تنسى. We will do all of this. It's all on us. Just leave it. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله كنز من كنوز الجنة. Saying that, realizing that there's no power except through Allah, this is the treasure. And that's the key to the book. This is the key to this month. Now the book itself has a key, and that's the Fatihatul Kitab. The Fatihatul Kitab is the special gift to the Prophet ﷺ. I want to try and hint what's the connection between the Fatiha and the Prophet ﷺ. And the Fatiha is the only thing we are obliged to recite every single day, nothing else. And the Fatiha contains within it just one dua at the heart of it. And it's the only thing we are actually obliged to ask for in every single day. And it's the dua for guidance. And so it turns back to what I'm saying, that the key to the book is not feeling found, but it's feeling a little bit like I'm lost right now. The more we can feel like that, the more it will speak to us. And the more you feel like, I'm okay, I know where I am, then you're not looking for anything anymore. We have to always be looking. And so that's why, now what is the dua for? If you look at how it's worded after recognizing, how everything is ultimately from Allah, every praise is His, and everything comes from Him in mercy, and that there's a plurality in the Fatiha, everything is plural, and we'll maybe reflect on this. So we surrender, we lower ourselves before you, we seek your help. Then it says, guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you've blessed. So how do you approach the book? If this is the key to the book, it's that you come needing guidance, which means you're a little bit seeking. You're not fully found. There's something greater you're looking for, always. إِلَّا بِتِغَاءَ وَجْهِ رَبِّهِ الْأَعْلَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes, the ulama said, this is Sayyidina Abu Bakr. He is seeking the highest face of Allah. Because everything is a face of Allah. أَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Everything is a face of Allah. But these people are seeking the highest face. They want a higher level, and a higher level, and a higher level, and a higher level. And so the Fatiha is seeking the path of all of those. It's plural. Take us to the path of all of those that you've blessed. Those who are not in your wrath, and those who are not astray. So what's the key to guidance? It's seeking the pathways to the righteous. That's why a third of the Holy Quran is describing the stories of the prophets, alayhi salatu wasalam. Now these stories are not just obviously stories, and they're not just also incidents to learn lessons, but there's something a bit more than that. These prophets
all represent these highest faces, if you like. If Allah is representing in all of this, these are one of the highest representations are these people. The Khalilullah, the Kalimullah, the Najiyullah, the Masihullah. These are the greatest signs of Allah is these people. We are human beings. They represent what we have to aspire to. The closer we get to them, the more we know about Allah. The closer we get to them, the more we know about our purpose. The closer we get to them, the more we represent Allah in this creation. We were made to represent Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. That this is my representative. It's like Allah on earth. This is my representative. He's my ambassador. That's what the human being was meant to be. Our journey in life is a journey to reflect Allah's perfections. And the highest beings of these perfections are these people. So the journey in the prophets is the journey to getting closer and closer to Allah. There's no other door to Him. Who is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He is the Jami'. He is the one in whom all of these perfections are found. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructed him about the prophets. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ulaika alladhina hadahumullah fabihudahum iqtadih. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, these are saying to the Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, these are the people Allah guided, so follow their guidance. And what that means is that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he embodied within himself the perfections of the Kalim, and the perfections of the Khalil, and the perfections of the Naji, and the perfections of the Masih. He is the Jami'. That's why he is the final prophet. And that's why he is the Sayyid of the prophets. And that's why he is the Sayyid of this creation. And that's why he is the great, if I want to use this metaphor then, the great face, if you like, the great manifestation of Allah. So the key to the Rasul is all of these prophets. Because that's what the Prophet ﷺ was told to do. Follow all of them. Gather all of them. What's the secret of the Fatiha is that it gathers. It's guide us to all of these great paths. That's the secret of this ummah. And that's why the secret of the Quran and the secret of the Rasul is something the ulama call jam'iyya. It's gathering. This is the Ummul Kitab. It contains all of the kutub. And he is the Sayyidur Rusul. He contains all of these fada'il. And so all I want to say is then the journey of this month, when we talk about, so that's why when we talk about celebrating the revelation, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say at the end of these verses? Allah says, in the verses of Ramadan, yuridullahu bikumul yusr. He wants ease for you. Wala yuridu bikumul usr. He doesn't want constricted and complication and pain and difficulty for you. And so this fasting is ease. Because it's showing us the way to Allah. Everything else is the constriction. Then it says, وَلِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ. So the conclusion of all of Ramadan is Allahu Akbar. And that's why the day of Eid starts with Allahu Akbar. And the hope is, in every Eid, the Allahu Akbar is of a different sort. Because the Allahu Akbar is meant to represent what He's guided you to. لِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ. That you could declare the greatness of Allah, the vastness of Allah, the infinity of Allah, in accordance to, or upon which, or for the sake of which that He has guided you. And as the guidance increases, which is what the Fatiha is teaching us, there's always more. There's always the higher face. There's always the higher journey. Then every Ramadan, if it's a cycle of prayer, every prostration, every Ramadan, or every Eid al-Fitr then is a different kind of takbir. That's what we have, that's what the conclusion of it all is, because it all goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. And that's where it ends. And all of this is so we could say Allahu Akbar with a new vantage point. In every moment, a new vantage point. That's why the word Allahu Akbar it just means Allah is bigger. Because in every moment, He's bigger. Everything you know, He's more than that. And all it is realizing that He's always bigger. He's always greater. And we're just going in a journey in infinity. There's no end. There's no end and there's no stopping. That's Allahu Akbar. It's always more. There's always more. وَلِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. And it's to be grateful for everything that we have, because He made us to know Him. He made us to reflect Him. And He gave us the ability to follow the footsteps of these prophets. And these prophets are, like I said, the greatest manifestations. And the Rasul's greatness is that he's encompassed all of it. It's not that you forget the prophets, it's that they're the key to him, actually. Approaching the Anbiya, learning about their perfections and their struggles, all of it is a key to him. Alayhi salatu wassalam. Sayyidah Aisha said, كَانَ خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ. So he was the Quran. So in this sense, the whole journey is a journey to him. It's a journey to understand more and more about his mystery. Or you could say his sunnah. Or you could say his akhlaq. Or you could say his knowledge. That's all that this is all about as well. And so that's why part of how the Ramadan should end is just an appreciation, because the Rasul said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, "La yashkurullah man la yashkurun nas." If you haven't fully thanked Allah, if you haven't thanked the intermediaries that He's placed for us, and the Rasul is the greatest intermediary, there is no Quran that would have reached us, and there's no guidance, and there's no knowledge of the Anbiya, and there's nothing. And so in as much as we are magnifying the greatness of Allah at the end of this month, it is to understand with each month and with each cycle. That's why at the end of the salat, we end with the salat ala Rasulillah, always. Because the idea is, with each salat, with every moment of realizing, oh, Allah is bigger. Oh, Allah is bigger still. Oh, He's greater still. At the end of that journey is to realize how we've got there. And it always ends with the salat ala Rasulillah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So it's my advice to myself and all of you, if we're going to take Ramadan forwards, it's just to appreciate the book, appreciate the fact that all of these beings, these great beings the book speaks of, they're just the pathways to Allah. And they're angles to the perfections and the sunan of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have no purpose except to get closer and closer. You'll never make it to Rasulullah, just like you'll never make it to Allahu al-Akbar. You'll never make it to an end point. But it's our journey is to keep journeying. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised, وَمَن يَخْرُجْ مِن بَيْتِهِ مُهَاجِرًا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ ثُمَّ يُدْرِكْهُ الْمَوْتُ فَقَدْ وَقَعَ أَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. As long as you leave your home, traveling to Allah and His Messenger, you have your reward. And the ulama say the journey continues in the grave. So the journey doesn't stop as long as we die journeying. This is the only goal in life. The only goal in life is to die journeying. The end point is with Allah. Allah's given us different capacities. Allah's given us different gifts. We will be able to approach different perfections of Rasulullah in a way that suits us. So that's up to Him. But it's for us just to make sure we die journeying. And we don't die not journeying. And that's why the daily prayer and the Fatiha is the key to this. The only other thing I want to say, or just two more things on this point. So it's just, as we end this month, my advice to myself and all of you is to start, if you like, investing in the next cycle, the next Ramadan. How do we invest in it? Is just to increase our ability to benefit from the book. And whatever it is, whatever suits you, and it could be learning how to read it, and it could be learning some Arabic, and it could be memorizing some more of it. Whatever it is, your preparation for the next cycle. That's the haqq of it now. So it's not a bidding of farewell, it's a preparing for the next one. It's like at the end of the Holy Quran, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala love? Is as soon as you finish it, you start it again. Everything is in a cycle. Everything is in a cycle. And so we just want to start preparing for the next prostration, for the next cycle, whatever's easy for you. And like I said, the key is just need. There's no other key. The key is not nothing more than approaching it, realizing that what you need is in it. The thing I'll say is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's the one who embodies these perfections. He is the one who embodies this manifestation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and this perfect book. And so it's just to realize that the journey is also a journey to him as well. La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. The journey is in both of this. And so also prepare for your next prostration or your next cycle in learning about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whatever is easy for you. And to send as much as Allah makes easy for you of the salawat on the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Because with each of these salawat, we are connected to him. And in connecting to him, we are continuing in this journey. La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. The only other thing I'll say is now about the Holy Quran. If we say about a third of it is these descriptions of the Anbiya and the Rusul, another third of the Holy Quran is about the Shara'i'. The Shara'i' are these sacred injunctions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to fulfill. When it comes to these sacred injunctions, all I wish to highlight is that in my own reflection, and I said this at the beginning of it, in my own reflection, the sacred law, all of it, is ultimately showing us how to build community. Because these Shara'i' were revealed in Medina. Medina was a particular stage in the journey and the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Medina is the beginning of the Islamic calendar. Medina is the beginning of how the Muslims understand their own idea of civilization. This is the order, the age of Rasulullah. In the world, they counted back to the Hijrah. Why is this? What I find so interesting is that before the Hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ, he already ascended beyond the heavens, beyond where any being has gone. The highest physical ascent, the highest imaginable ascent, he already had it. It's done. But that wasn't the end of his life, ﷺ. That was the beginning of the next stage now. And the next stage was about building civilization. The Shara'i' are the arkan, are the pillars of this civilization. Now, what are the arkan of those arkan? What are the pillars of the pillars? It's what he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, Bunya al-Islamu ala khamsin. Islam is built upon 5. These 5 pillars of Islam, which we learn about often as we're kids, what they represent is not simply the minimum we need between us and Allah, but they represent the vision of this Sharia. What is the Sharia ultimately about? If you look at each of these, it's about building ummah. It's about coming together under Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you look at the prayer we're meant to look, we're only here because of prayer, and look how many people are here. Prayer is about coming together. For the sake of prayer, we build masajid. And the masjid is what the Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam was the first thing he made as the mark of his civilization in Medina, was his masjid. And the masjid represents a space of land dedicated to Allah that no one can claim to own. And that is Allah's, if you like, right on earth, or Allah's house on earth. But what it represents is equality. No one can walk into a mosque and say that I don't belong there. They can't. No one can say you don't have a right to pray in this mosque. They can't. What the mosque creates is an idea that we're all united as believers. The mosque creates ummah. It creates identity. The mosque has been the birthplace of all of Islam's great institutions, all the great circles of learning, all the resistance to bad politics, all of it took place in the masajid because it's a free space dedicated to Allah. Ramadan, which we are experiencing, is a time of this great gathering and great eating together and great coming together. Hajj is the time of visiting, of traveling to see the global ummah and to realize we're united across languages and tribes. The zakat is an obligatory charity, but it's paid Muslim to Muslim. And what the zakat is reminding us is that whoever says La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah is in family. That ummah means family. Just like your own blood brother, you owe him a duty of care by virtue of blood. Your faith brother, you owe him a duty of care by virtue of faith. So what are these 5 pillars? They're the essence of what it means to build ummah. And that's why the first pillar is so great. It's just 2 words. If someone utters them, you can't keep them out. You can't say, but I don't believe you. And you can't say, but yesterday you were. You can't say, oh, but you used to attack us. You can't say anything. That's why it's so great. Whoever utters the words, they're your equal in the masajid. They have a right of care of your zakat. You break bread with them, and they travel to the holy sanctuary. Upon this brotherhood, the whole civilization has been built. And this civilization is what I call the civilizational da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ. Because what made Islam spread in the earth, it wasn't the pamphleting or individual one-on-one preaching. It wasn't that actually. It was just allowing this civilization to establish itself in particular areas. Sayyidina Umar told the Muslims, don't mix with the non-Muslims. It wasn't about preaching. It was, we're in charge, now build your own little cities. It took a while, but eventually everyone wanted to join this group because these shara'i' create izz. These shara'i' create justice. These shara'i' create dignity. Everyone wants to be dignified. Everyone wants to be cared for. Everyone wants to find peace. And so they came, and they came, and they came, and they never went back again. These are the heartlands of Islam. The Levant or Egypt or Iraq, these are the heartlands of Islam, and they converted through the civilization. Our duty, as we end this cycle of engaging the Holy Book through need, our duty is to serve the shara'i'. That's part of what it means when we told our journey to the perfections and the teachings of Rasulullah ﷺ is to serve the shara'i'. Serving the shara'i' is not simply sitting in classrooms, although that's very, very important. Serving in shara'i' is finding every imaginable means you can to bring ummah together. It's as simple as that. What is the instruction of zakat? It's really simple. There should be no Muslim amongst us who suffers in silence. It's a very simple instruction. But to fulfill it, we need to organize ourselves. We need to coordinate. Maybe we take turns. Maybe we need to know who are the Muslims around us. Maybe we do a public call on the radio. We have to figure it out. That's on us. But the instruction is really simple. There should be no Muslim around us who's suffering in silence. No one should feel, if you're a Muslim, that you're alone. It's really simple. That's the essence of these pillars. That's the essence of the shara'i'. If we could fulfill just this much, you'll see what happens. It creates izz. It creates dignity. It creates comfort. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the great blessings He describes to the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam is that He brought everyone together. وَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِهِمْ وَلَوْ أَنفَقْتَ مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا مَا أَلَّفْتَ بَيْنَهُمْ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ أَلَّفَ بَيْنَهُمْ. It was the great blessing of Allah. He said, I brought them together. That's the great gift. Or وَمَنْ يُشَاقِقِ الرَّسُولَ وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ نُوَلِّهِ مَا تَوَلَّى. The one who opposes the Rasul and goes away from the way of the believers. The idea is the believers are always meant to be a collective. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ. You are only brothers. So every time you see a split, make up. And these are the great sadaqat in Islam, is that you take time away from your busyness just to spend time to make up between people. Every split between people is a split within the brotherhood of Islam. It's not just two people anymore. We're a jama'ah. The Prophet ﷺ gave so much importance to make sure that you stood shoulder to shoulder and the lines were straight and everyone was unified in salat. And so all I'll leave you with as we prepare for the next cycle, and the next cycle to Ramadan is what can we do to strengthen ummah where we are? It goes outwards. What zakat teaches us is that those who are near to you physically or geographically have a particular right over you by virtue of nearness and faith. And so what can we do where we are to build these ties, to heal the rifts, to make being a Muslim mean that you're cared for? And let this spread out. And as it spreads, we'll see wonderful things. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa jazakum khairan. I'll stop here. Thank you very much for your kindness and patience. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. If anybody wants to say anything or ask anything or challenge anything, I'll be very happy. Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
So inshallah, what we'll do, because the Shaykh has given us so much, we'll engage in some salawat upon the Jami' sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and then after that, maybe that will give chance to people to think of some questions that are not on their mind right now, and then or forget the questions that they already have. But you can make a note of any questions, and then after that, inshallah, we'll open it up for a Q&A with the Shaykh as well. But
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله صلى الله عليه.
Just a very quick one. A few people have been asking about zakat. Outside, there's a code that you can scan, and inshallah, a QR code on the entrance, so you can. It's for the young people. There's a QR code outside, inshallah, so you can support families in the UK that are zakat eligible. Inshallah, we'll have a local initiative as well, and inshallah, maybe we'll work with the Zakat Foundation to identify these families, so that the Wickham community can then support the local people as well, inshallah ta'ala. So if you still have zakat to give, the code is outside near the entrance. Do scan it, and something happens. And inshallah, if you get stuck, message me and I'll send you a direct link as well. Jazakallah khair.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله صلى الله عليه. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. يا أكرم الخلق ما لي من ألوذ به سواك عند حلول الحديث العمام. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. ولن يضيق رسول الله جاهك بإذا الكريم تجلى باسم منتقم. مولاي صل وسلم أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. فإن من جودك الدنيا وضارتها، ومن علومك علم اللوح والقلم. يا نفس لا تقنطي من زلات عظمت، إن الكبائر في الغفران كالأمام. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. لعل رحمة ربي حين يقسمها تأتي على حسب العصيان في القسم. يا ربي واجعل رجاعي غير منعكس لديك، واجعل حسابي غير منخرم. مولاي صل من أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. والطف بعبدك في الدارين إن له صبرا متى تدعوه الأهوال ينهزم. وذل صحبي صلاة منك دائمات على النبي بمنهل ومنسجم. مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير كلهم ما رنحت عذبات الباني ريح صبا وأتراب العيسى حاد العيسي بالنغم ثم الرضا عن أبي بكر وعن عمر وعن علي وعن عثمان ذي الكرم مولاي صل وسلم خير الخلق كلهم والآل وصحبه ثم التابعين فهم أهل التقى والنقى والحلم والكرم يا ربي بالمصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم يا ربي بالمصطفى بلغ مقاصدنا واغفر لنا ما مضى يا واسع الكرم مولاي صل وسلم على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم واغفر إلهي لكل المسلمين بما يتلون في المسجد الأقصى وفي الحرام بجاه ما نبيته في طيبة حرام واسمه قسم من أعظم القسم مولاي لي وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم وهذه بردة المختار قد ختمت والحمد لله في بدء وفي ختم أبياتها قد أتت 60 مع 100 فرج بها كربنا يا واسع الكرم واحفظ بها قدسنا يا واسع الكرم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
صلوات طيبات للحبيب مولاي محمد صلوات طيبات للحبيب مولاي محمد فاح طيب المسك فاح هيج القلب فباح حركت طرف ثناها من غرام في محمد صلوات طيبات للحبيب مولاي محمد طيبة المختار طيبة حبها يا ناس قربة ليتنا يا قوم صحبة عند مولانا محمد صلوات طيبات للحبيب مولاي محمد ليتنا نلقى الحبيب حبه أضحى عجيبا ليتنا نسعى قريبا للحبيب مولاي محمد صلوات طيبات أي محمد يوم عيد عند قلبي حينما لقيت حبي خير خلق الله طبي الحبيب مولاي محمد صلوات طيبات للحبيب مولاي محمد. ربنا إنا أتينا من بعاد وسعينا، ربنا فانظر إلينا بالحبيب مولاي محمد. صلوات طيبات للحبيب مولاي محمد، صلوات طيبات للحبيب مولاي محمد.
اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله صلى الله عليه.
Inshallah, we'll start the Q&A now with Shaykh. I think you have two questions with you. Do you want to start with those two? Would that be okay? Would you? Okay. And then we'll see how we go. Ideally, if the sisters wouldn't mind writing their questions down and somehow getting them. Oh, are there? Well, there's two. I'm assuming they'll have more. But if they have any questions, then yeah.
There's no obligation to ask questions, by the way, just to make that clear. They're quite tricky questions, I have to say. So this one question says that I mentioned that Allah doesn't want us to feel hardship and constriction. So that was specifically a reference to the shara'i', that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't ask of us these things to make things difficult. Or in the verses of Tahara, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ما يريد الله ليجعل عليكم من حرج ولكن ليطهركم وليتم نعمته عليكم. Allah doesn't ask you to do wudu and ghusl and tayammum because He wants difficulty. These aren't things He's doing just to put us through hoops, but rather these are meaningful and they lead to tahara and they lead to ni'am in the verse of wudu. And that's why He asks us to do them. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying is, He's asking us to do things that are good for us. That's the point. There is no hoop jumping in the shara'i'. In this verse of yuridullah bikum al-yusr wa la yuridu bikum al-usr, Shaykh Tahir Ibn Ashur, he says that he compares this to other traditions where people have attempted to overcome the ego. You know, standing on one leg and I don't know what, rolling on your side. There's different austerities people have done to overcome ego and enter into a spiritual space. Fasting is easier than all of that. And it's a means to great insights for those who do it according to the Sunnah. That's what all of this means. This is the easiest path to enlightenment. The Sharia is the easiest path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no easier path with results like this sacred law. This is the point. Allah wants ease and not hardship. And that's why in the verses of fasting, if you're sick, you don't fast. If you're this, you don't fast. Just make sure you make up the number, because there's a secret within the number. But now the person's going off into the non-shara'i' and says, is this applicable to all situations? I was wondering if this applies to exposing oneself to hurtful comments of toxic, abusive parents. How does one balance between not causing hardship to oneself and not abandoning parents like this? Yeah, so the point of the sacred law is not to avoid hardship for yourself. The point is to do your best to do what is right. And doing what is right does entail difficulty, entails struggle, entails sacrifice. أحسب الناس يقول آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. Yeah. Do people think that they'll be able to say, we believe, and they won't be tested? We talked about the high path of the Anbiya and the Rusul in the Holy Quran, the centrality of their stories to our journey. And their stories were not easy stories. And in their stories, they represent every imaginable difficulty of exile and loss of loved ones and accusations. So we find in them comfort in how to deal with difficulty so we can rise. So my comment was about the shara'i'. As for these matters, we have to just do our best to do what is right. So parents have a right on us. And so again, every situation has its own peculiarities. It's definitely not a fatwa. And I thankfully don't have the title of mufti as well.
But all I will say is, if you peculiarities of the case that I do not know, as a general statement, putting up with the difficulty of parents and being merciful to them is of the greatest means to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it takes difficulty and it takes sacrifice, and it's not easy. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala emphasizes, إِمَّا يَبْلُغَنَّ عِنْدَكَ الْكِبَرِ أَحَدُهُمَا أَوْ كِلَاهُمَا. If one of them reaches you in old age, or perhaps both of them, فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. Don't say oof, because what happens is when they get old, again, I don't know the peculiarities of this case might be different, but in a general sense, they can be, you might find them irritating, or they repeat themselves, or they ask for repeated things, or they criticize everything which you think of doing. And at some point, you just get tired. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, don't get tired, or don't let it be expressed. On the contrary, وَخْفِضْ لَهُمَ جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ. On the contrary, show them what you can of this wing of mercy, and pray for them as well. Even when then, so one is physically, you show them mercy. One is in your heart, you show them mercy, which is in your dua for them. And so the hadith, the hadith is connected to Ramadan, isn't it? About the Prophet ﷺ rising the pulpit saying Ameen 3 times. And one was, who can say the hadith properly? No, just in English.
Finds the parents in old age and does not
Enter Jannah thereby. Then what's the dua? What's the dua against him? Let him what?
أبعد الله من- something like that. May Allah distance him from.
Yes, idea is basically, and it was, who is it that comes to Ramadan and doesn't find his forgiveness and salvation? A very strange person, very remote person. And similarly, whoever finds their parents in old age and doesn't somehow enter Jannah because of that, then there's something wrong with this person. It's like your open door. So it's not easy. I don't know the peculiarities, but I would say ask Allah for strength and make sure that you do what is in your power and capacity to show them this loving kindness. And you will need your alone time. You'll need your healing time. Make sure you have friends. Make sure you have the community. Make sure you have something which is your own as well. All of us, we have to approach everything through balance. If you go too far into something, it will normally lead to the opposite. So if you overly surrender before you're ready for it, you're going to end up being the worst kid ever as well. Someone asked one of the Salaf, he said, if my mum's telling me to divorce my wife, shall I divorce her? And the person said, if you've done every other good thing for your mum, and this is the only thing left over, again, then by all means. Because then you're ready for this sort of devotion to your mum. But if you haven't done the basics and you do the most complicated thing, what's typically going to happen, you're going to start hating her for the rest of your life. And so everything needs balance. So even with this thing, I don't know the peculiarity of the situation. All it says, approach it with balance. Give them their due care, whatever you're able to do. Make sure you have your alone time and your healing time. But don't abandon them and don't let them feel wronged by you, to the best of your ability. And ask Allah for strength. It's sad for me to say it like this, but it's only a few years. First of all, life is only short and the overlap is only short. Parents put up with kids and they're absolute nuisance, actually for all of their lives, I have to say. But in terms of kids as helpless beings, maybe you can say 12 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20, whatever it is. And then they have other problems that kids bring. So similarly, it's just the reverse. It's literally just paying someone back. If you want to look at it really simple. You were someone who couldn't communicate and was very irritating and was always complaining. And so it's just the cycle is being returned. And it's not normally for that long. So it's just that period of just giving someone their due. That's the best I can say. I'm sorry, and people here have better advice than me. But that's just all that comes to my mind. May Allah give you strength, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala admit you into the Jannah for being good to parents in a very difficult situation as well. We talked about the Anbiya, isn't it? I'm reminded of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam and his time with his father. The ulama of tafsir have some debate on, is this his father or is this his uncle? But at least if you look at the zahir of the Quran, it's called his father. And the man was trying to burn him alive. And the response was only kind words. Assalamun alayka, sa'astaghfiru laka rabbi, إِنَّهُ كَانَ بِي حَفِيًّا. You know, when it all gave up, said, fine, I'm just going to keep praying for you, until Allah told him that he can't do that. And so everything we need of our difficulties is in these people that Allah has given to us. So just see what you find that mirrors their story and just reflect on it. Every difficult time I had in my life, I always go back to Surah Yusuf. I don't know why. Every time I find there's a bit of a turmoil in my personal life, I've always just recited Surah Yusuf and I always find something that gives me strength. That's all I'll say. The next one is that I mentioned that the mosque is a symbol of equality for all. However, so many mosques in Britain don't welcome women. How do we reconcile these two? Yeah, that's also fascinating. I normally give a what's it called, small print, what's the word, disclaimer. I say we might have our own relationships with our own mosque. There might be, again, peculiarities. The committee is really bad, and etc., etc. But the generality of what the mosque represents can never be denied. So let me give you this example. People built mosques in Britain in the 60s, 70s, 80s. These were people who came, maybe they were, immigrant workers. You know, they came here to work, but they thought, let's just build a mosque because we have to. What did the mosque signify to the next generation? It signified that, oh, there's a place that brings us together because we are believers. The mosque creates identity for the entire community, whether you step foot in the mosque or not. That's my belief in the significance of the mosque. That's why over time, we have all these Muslim businesses settled around mosques. Mosques become hubs of the community. People will come and move there without realizing it's because there was a mosque there. My personal belief is, you know, we have all these wonderful Islamic colleges in England slowly starting. I don't think we would have had the idea if we didn't have mosques here 30 years ago. This is my personal belief. Because the mosque tells the community, you are united in faith. You're not just an ethnic group. In a mosque, kids learn how to read Quran and get beaten up. And what happens is, do you guys still beat? I don't know, but it's really... Anyway, when the camera's off, I'll tell you, I'll give you a dalil for the beating. But what happens is you form solidarity. You form a sense of, oh, we're a group, we're a community, we do Islamic education, we are Muslims, and you come. So that all I'll say is, the mosque anchors the imagination of the community, whether you enter it or not. It signifies something bigger than simply what's in its walls. This is my personal belief about the mosque. This is the first thing. The second thing, like I said the mosque gives birth to all of Islam's great institutions, which is another reason why it starts from this notion of what it signifies. So like the first circles of learning were all in the masajid, and even the anti-government fatwas were in the masjid. These were private circles of learning. Whoever wants to come can come. These are not the publicly appointed judges or the publicly appointed figures. It's all just the community. People used to, over time, travel to study with ulama who taught in particular masajid. Then they started building inns, so people could live next to the masjid and come for the dars inside the masjid. Then they said, okay, let's build a separate institution for this purpose, which is what we can call the college or university. According to some historians, then the Crusaders came to Jerusalem and they saw these universities and they went back to their countries or this country, and they say that's the origin of universities in England and in Italy and in Europe. It all comes from the masjid. You cannot underestimate the significance of this institution to the way history has unfolded across the planet. The legal, everything. You cannot put into words the power of this space. Whether you enter it yourself or not, that's not the point, because you're connected. We're all nodes. You connect to someone, to someone, to someone, and the mosque is the anchor. That's all I'm going to say. That's just on that front. And the last thing is saying about women and the mosque. That's a very, very long story. Scholars have different positions on what this topic is. But I'll say one interesting thing about the Hanafi school that interests me. Because the Hanafi school is a sort of Salaf-based school in how it understands tradition. And so the Prophet ﷺ did in hadiths encourage women to come to the mosque, or at least encourage men not to discourage women to come to the mosque. But in the time of the Salaf, Sayyidina Umar, is report from him and from Sayyidah Aisha, that they said had the Prophet seen what's happening now, ﷺ, he wouldn't have let the women come. And if you want to imagine what this is like, you have to realize that most of Arabia entered into Islam without really having much time with the Prophet ﷺ. See, there's no ordinary people. And if the mosque is this public hub 5 times a day, and these ordinary people who've yet to learn the adab of Islam are all meeting, you can imagine if people think, what's going on in the masjid? It wasn't like that when the Prophet was there, alayhi salam. You can imagine their pain. That's where these statements are coming from. And so what the Hanafi scholars say, the way I interpret their words, and they're the most conservative on this women and the mosque question. Obviously, there's a Hanafi precedent in Great Britain. The way they say it, the way I summarize their understanding is as follows. Praying in the mosque shouldn't be a reason for a woman to feel she should leave the home. That's how they see it. Let me say this carefully. Praying in the mosque doesn't need to be a reason to make her feel Allah wants her to leave the home. Why am I saying it this way? Because the Hanafis have another chapter called Kitab Adab al-Qadi, chapter on how the Qadi should conduct himself. In this chapter, they say the Qadi's office should be in the masjid. That's how it was in the early period. They say the Qadi can be a woman. They also say if a woman is menstruating, she still comes to the door of the masjid, the Qadi will speak to her there. Obviously, if she's not, then she goes into the masjid. And so if you look at the Hanafis, who are the most conservative in women mosque conversations, it's quite clear what they're saying is women are fully welcome in the mosque for any worldly need, if they're already out, if there's an advantage for them. But don't tell them God wants you to leave and go there 5 times a day. So it's a particular sort of social etiquette that you're most welcome to stay at home. All of your reward is at home, and the mosque is not closed off to you as well, especially if you have a reason or a need. I know I've not helped anyone. I know I've probably complicated this conversation as well. But it's just to say that if we're talking about modern mosques, we have to think about that carefully, in the sense that we don't live in a time when women are at home, they're out. Whether it's university or work or other things, we need to make sure they have public, safe places to pray. So the whole restrictive doctrine is about, don't tell them it's time, Adhan has come, go to the mosque. That shouldn't be what women, they're most welcome and most respectable at home. But if they're already out, then don't make it that the one we're meant to be showing respect to, because that the whole point was respect. You're fully respectable here. You don't have to expose yourself, because in some cultures it's exposing. They're saying, no, you're okay here. But don't turn it on its head that they're already out and they have no other places to pray. So my only, I guess, suggestion here is, from the very strict Hanafi conservative view, is we need to make sure that women have safe public places to pray. That's part of what this whole, because it's about respecting women, this whole issue of women not going and going. There should never be a mosque that says women aren't welcome and the men are inside praying, women have to pray on the pavement. That's turning the chivalry of Islam on its head. The most welcome say, we don't have women's spaces and it's a Jama'ah time right now, sister. When the Jama'ah ends, yeah, we'll empty the space and you go in the back. That's the least that needs to happen, even on the most conservative reading on this topic. So I've not answered your question. I've made a different question. But anyway, thank you very much.
Shaykh, I have a question. You spoke about that, and I think we veered slightly from Ramadan, but it's the bigger picture, right, that we're looking at now to an extent. You spoke about the masjid as a hub for resistance to bad politics, which, again, every town has its peculiarities, as you mentioned, and I hope I'm not going to malign anybody too much here. Nowadays, some would say that the masjid has now become the hub of bad politics. And we are sitting right now in the community center. This is where the Tarawih is taking place. The amount of people that congregated for this prayer shows that many people feel dissatisfied with what the masajid have to offer now in the current state that we're living in. Partly, the idea is, what is the process of reformation of the masajid? Secondly, by setting up these sort of institutions as alternatives to the masajid, are we paying homage to the masjid, or are we actually undermining the civilizational position that the masjid holds in Muslim community?
Yeah, it's a very big question. I don't have a clear answer for you. All I will say is that what you've done is you've found a way to catch people who didn't feel at home in the masjid, and all of that is good. All I will say is maintain. You see, when I said the sacred law is asking for community, It's asking for politics from each of us. If politics is about how to deal with people, that's what all of us bear by virtue of being people who serve the sacred law. Because the sacred law brings us together. And as you come together, there is friction. And that's why there's all these institutions to help us address friction. And at the heart of it is maintaining this brotherhood. So we are forced then to be political creatures then, to think about who is not being caught by this mosque. How can we catch them as well? How do we ensure that the community is together? So all of this is just thinking strategically, or could say politically, or you could call shariatly. All of this needs to happen. And just like in the politics, there's no one correct answer. You'll feel and I'll feel. I'll feel, no, I'm going to engage the elders. I'm going to spend 10 years being good to them, and I'm going to slowly change them. And you're going to feel, I can't waste my time with this. I'm going to start my center. These are just human tendencies. Each of them have a basis. Just like in all of Islamic history, all the disputes come like this. I see one way, you see, well, these are the ijtihadat. But the main thing is, as long as you are trying to serve the vision of the sacred law by having your breakaway center, and I'm trying to serve the vision of the sacred law by working with the elders for 5 years in the mosque, then our hope is we have the same reward. That's all I'll say. So we have to think politically or socially. We have to do our best. We have to bring the community together. And as much as possible, we have to diffuse friction for the sake of Allah and His Messenger, as much as possible. And then we'll just see where it takes us. I can't say more than this.
If anybody else has a question,
So, in the pursuit of personal transformation, what's the balance between private worship and public worship, and also between seeking knowledge and taking action?
Yeah, it's brilliant. These are all very complicated questions, and everything to do with balance is always the answer will always end up with you. It is finding balance. All I will say is the sunnah is obviously the sunnah of balance. The Prophet ﷺ, he established the masajid for public congregation, but most of his prayers were private, beyond the obligatory. And so this is the balance. So there has to be a public time. And the public time has to be a community time. And if the community time can be a dhikr time, it's best, which is what the prayer is. Let's come together in prayer, and then by all means, we chat outside, we'll get to know each other, etc., etc. And so as much as possible, we want a public time which has a moment with community and service or coming together. And we need to have a private time, because ultimately it's the private which is which fuels the public. This is the truth of the matter. Look at Ramadan. Ramadan is certainly a private exercise, and then we come together in prayer in the masajid. We come together to break fast. The idea is we have to fuel ourselves as individuals. Some will get maximum full, some will get 50, some get 25, and we kind of just connect, and we hope the charge kind of balances each on whatever they're able to handle of this charge. So the idea is, yes, the basis is private. It's not public. But private without public is not the sunnah, and it's not the sharia, and it's not the vision of da'wah, which is the civilizational da'wah. So that's why all of us have a sort of burden, which I'm going to call political or social, but what fuels it is the private. But for many people, they can't do private. Meaning, I can't pray on my own. I feel like I don't concentrate. I don't know enough Quran. I only feel good when I come to the mosque. That's why we need to make spaces for everyone. Not everyone has what it takes to have a private worship. But that's why those who can do it need to do it. And they are like, if you like, spiritual anchors. People might not see the connection, but they're anchoring the community in their own privateness. But we need to make sure there's a public, so everyone is welcome. The public is for the general. The other thing was about learning and practice. Again, this is very, very difficult. I can't put a clear answer to this. And the reason why is I think of it as like a class. Obviously, my interest is in fiqh. And I concluded that fiqh is ultimately a social endeavor. It's about society. And within fiqh, if you look at fuqaha, people of fiqh, yes, some of them are your ascetic, authoring type of people. They write books. They stay away from dunya, they don't like politics. And so you have individuals like that who've been very important to the fiqh tradition. But the fiqh group as a whole have been very, very political in all of Islamic history. They've been the biggest political agency in society. The fiqh group as a whole have been like, I don't know how to find the equivalent, like I can't think of any equivalent right now, but they were the people who were intermediaries between the politics and the public. Yeah, I don't know about complicated words, but all I can say is they had this in-between status where they made sure that the political was represented to the public and the public was represented to the political. It was a social class, always, as a group. And so all I'll say is we as individuals will have our own tendencies. And so it's not the case that that as individuals, we should do what feels very, very strange or awkward or whatever it might be. Maybe some of us were just made to be muhaddiths and behind the closed door read 18 hours a day and things of that sort. As a community, we're meant to support each other. So as a community, we need to make sure that we have this balance. As for individuals, the balance is really for that person to figure out between themselves and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one can tell them what is balance in this. But the community will be at a loss if all of their learned are in libraries 20 hours a day. This is for sure. But if some of them are, they probably need that. And we all need to find out our own place.
There's a question online.
I wanted to kind of touch on that, the neediness that you talked about, the brokenness that Ramadan brings us to, and you kind of made an analogy with how the Prophet used to do tahannus and retreat, and the example of Musa as well. What would be your advice for us for the sort of between the Ramadans, between that phase? I guess I was thinking to myself, okay, we could be fasting according to the Sunnah, and that's a practice and a righteous practice. It's a bit more difficult. You find it less energizing and easy, I guess, to do as Ramadan itself. But how to hold on to that neediness and that brokenness in the month.
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's about how to hold on to the neediness that we've got from Ramadan. Again, I'm sorry, these are all very, very big and difficult questions, really. I'm happy for anyone here to chip in, really. But all I'll say is that the hadith says, Mukhul ibadah is dua. Dua is the essence of worship. And dua is expressing need. And so I think we just need to be having good dua habits. And I say this to myself because I myself need to do this better. I reminded you of the Fatiha, right? The Fatiha is the dua of need. And it's already built in, but we're too used to it sometimes. And so just try to connect with it in the prayer and just have a routine of dua. That's all that comes to mind. As for the specifics of should there be fasting or should there be charity or should there be everything, all of these are excellent, but it goes back to my answer to the brother as well, that these are peculiarities that a person has to figure out for themselves, what they're built for, what their body is built for, what their life is built for, what is right and appropriate, etc. So I can't say any particular act, but I think dua strikes me as very important here. Allahu Alam. Naam, Sayyidi.
My question is more just to see if my understanding of what you said is correct, if I've understood it correctly. So when you mentioned that the Prophet Ibrahim and the Prophet Musa and the Prophet Nuh, alayhimus salam, each of them is a wedge of Allah, is that saying that each of them is something through which Allah can be known, and a person through which some of Allah's names are manifested? So then the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's the Nabi through which all of Allah's names are manifested. And then taking that to the ayat of the Quran, the various ones where the wajh of Allah is mentioned, are you saying that we would take those ayats and the usage of the word wajh there? So, وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن زَكَاةٍ تُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ. There, the wajh of Allah is we give zakat in order for us to know Allah, that it will bring us closer to understanding Him.
Yeah, you've given a very, very good summary, and I can't. All I'll say is what comes to me is in the first part of what you said is yes, that first of all, like I said, أَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Every direction, everything you want to face, you will be facing Allah. That's what the Quran is saying quite explicitly. What the Quran shows us is how to realize that we are facing Allah. And so the Quran gives us a knowledge of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The names of Allah are revealed to us as this spiritual key to understand how to see God in creation. These were taught to us so we could make dua through them. These were taught to us so we could know Allah through them. And so that's what the names unlock, and that's what the Quran unlocks. So you can see, how is this a face of Allah that I am facing? As for the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what I've heard from some of the ulama, we said every name of Allah then has something which is mirroring it. That's what all of creation is nothing more than. It's the mirror of Allah and His perfection, everything. So if every name of Allah is mirroring in something, and the journey that the Quran is teaching us is how to read that mirror, how to see Rahman and Rahim and Wadud and so on. So Allah is also one of His names. And Allah is the supreme name. Allah is the name that means the being who's perfect, who gathers within Him all the traits of majesty and beauty. And so this name also has a mirror. This name also has a sight which manifests Allah, the name which means the perfect being. So what I've heard from the ulama is that Rasulullah, he is the mirror of the supreme name. And there's things in the Holy Quran that indicate this. If you look at, for example, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُبَايِعُونَكَ إِنَّمَا يُبَايِعُونَ اللَّهِ يَدُ اللَّهِ فَوْقَ أَيْدِيهِمْ. Those who are making their pledge to you are making their pledge to Allah. The hand of Allah is on their hand. And the hand that was on their hand was the hand of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But he is the mirror of Allah. He is the mirror of the perfect being. So that's all. That's my understanding. And so what you've said is what I understand. That all of these anbiya, they all represent. I'm still learning. That's all I'll say is I'm a little bit still learning. Well, I'm a lot still learning, sorry. But in this one point, I'm still understanding this a bit better. Shaykh al-Akbar, Quddisa Sirruhu, Shaykh Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, he's presented a system where every one of the prophets represents a particular vantage point of reality. And there's 28 vantage points, or 27, in his presentation. Each is represented by a prophet. And therefore then, every prophet is a particular manifestation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is a fundamental manifestation, if you like, or a fundamental, a fundamental key to understanding Allah, or a key to reality. I can't say this very well because I'm still trying to understand it, so maybe I shouldn't have said it. And the Rasul ﷺ said he is the gatherer of all of that. I'm sorry, I've not answered your question. As for interpreting verses, I can't comment. When he's giving zakat, seeking the wajh of Allah, I can't comment except to say that what I've heard from the ulama is that whatever these verses are able to hold of meaning, we can look at these meanings. That's part of the jam'iyyah of the Holy Quran. We talked about jam'iyyah, and so part of the miracle of the Holy Quran is that however you read it, the meaning is intended. And that's why that's why I said the journey in the Quran is an infinite journey. It doesn't actually stop. Because you can read it through different angles, through different divine names. You can read words through different points of view. All of it is intended. All of it is real. And that's the miracle of the Holy Book. Everything is an angle to understanding reality. Everything is an angle to understanding Allah. And so that's all I'll say. So I'll say, think about what you've opened up for me and for yourself, and just think about it. But I can't say it's the right way, or it's the only way, or it's what's intended. I can't say this. So I'm sorry, every time I answer a question, I confuse myself. So I'm really sorry. Is this a good time to stop? Maybe I'm just getting more and more confusing to myself, I think. Do you have anything more with you?
There's another easy question.
I didn't sleep loads, you see. So I think that's part of the problem right now. So I think everyone should leave before it gets more, I get more lost in this.
Turn the camera off and you relax.
I was hoping that just before we finish, if you could just maybe, I don't
What?
think the National Zakat Foundation, if you could just maybe give people some insight, not into what you do, because I think that's a whole presentation in and of itself,
Yeah.
but at least there's people watching and they might watch this back later. How do they get in touch? What is the means of connecting with the National Zakat Foundation?
Yeah, all I'll say is I've joined this project recently. I'm the Chief Executive of National Zakat Foundation. My hope and vision and dream is to establish a zakat system for Muslims in Britain. A system is not a service. Currently, it's a service. I want to make a system. A system is something which, whether you're paying zakat or receiving zakat, is not the point. The point is you are part of a system. You know that if you fall, it will catch you. You know that if there's someone in need, you know where you can direct them. Being a Muslim means you belong to a group, and the group is real. This is why I believe the duty of zakat is, and that's my hope and dream that we can establish this. We can only do this together. There's no one charity or one person that can do this. But it's about in every community, we take on our own responsibility, and I'll do everything in my power to support this effort. National Zakat Foundation, we've made great strides in technology, in governance, and we've got a fairly good experience now. We've been operating for 11 years. We do nationwide zakat collection and distribution. We help people with hardship relief grants. We help people with housing support. We help people with work so they can get into work. We help people with education if they're seeking to do community service and they're financially struggling. So we offer a range of services nationwide. We're the only charity with this focus and this reach. When I say we've got some good technology, which I'm hoping to harness to make the system, we have very, very good geographical reporting. We have a heat map. You can just go online. It's publicly available. You can type the postcode of High Wycombe, and you can just get a sense of what's the zakat that's come in and gone out in the last 6 months, 1 month, 12 months. You can see all the application flow coming in. So it's a transparent sort of data reporting system. We distribute cash through the post office network. If people don't have a bank, we can do it through the bank. The idea is we've got a lot of systems in place to support communities. And I just want to figure out the next piece of the puzzle is how do we harness our learnings, our experience, our skills, our infrastructure to now support communities on the grassroots. Currently, we're operating online. You have to apply for support online, but how do you now bring it into localities? And so that's just my project, which I'm thinking about, and that's just all I'll say to you all. I'll say support the work. Certainly distribute some of your zakat in the UK, because that's just part of what the work requires. And then I want to find ways we can reach out and communicate and share our learnings and just support each other. So all I wish to say about National Zakat Foundation. There is a QR code. I don't normally walk around with this, but what happened was I've started doing street da'wah. It's really weird. I've never done it my whole life, but I just walked around with this code in Manchester, asking people to scan the code. I learned that Muslims struggle with QR code readers. That was the main thing I learned. I don't know if it's a Muslim thing or if it's a wider population issue. Sorry? Bucket. Yeah, that's what I learned actually. So anyway, because it was in the car, I thought, okay, I'll just leave it by the entrance and see what happens. So there's a QR code. It's part of a project on another platform called Herocrat, actually. Someone's fundraising there for shelter for Muslims, and whatever money they raise, they'll give it to National Zakat Foundation's housing fund. So it's specifically for shelter, and it's just on that QR code anyway, that particular fundraiser. Please forgive me. I've spoken about a lot of things that I myself am trying to understand. But I guess why am I talking with so much ignorance as well? Maybe it hits the key of what I'm trying to say, is that you never stop learning. And what I think has been a gift that I'm grateful for is every so often in a cycle, I realize that I have to re-understand what it is that I know. And so in every periodic cycle, I realize that I have to look at the Quran differently than I used to. or look at fiqh differently than I used to, or look at understanding how we approach Allah differently than I used to. So I hope this will continue in my life. I found it very enriching for myself, because the truth of the matter is, like I said, it's an infinite journey. Every time you found a ground, you should realize that there's something under that ground. And we only find it through, like I said, through dua and through whatever Allah gives us of gifts. So I know I've been confusing. I know that I haven't got everything straight. But all I'll say is that this is my pride as well, that it's okay. You know, I'm trying to figure things out. I hope I will continue doing that. Anything I said that makes sense to you, please consider it. If it didn't make sense to you, please, before you leave the room, just drop it somewhere and find more sense somewhere else. I've got nothing more to say. I thank you all for your time. As Asim knows, I was in two hearts of coming, because I only came for his sake. He was like making dua on Laylatul Qadr, or I don't know what, like for me to come. It was really strange. I felt really sorry for him. And I thought, you know what, I just got to make one person happy. So, but I feel really energized sitting with you all. I'm very, very grateful to you. I'll ask you to forgive me. And like I said, anything that doesn't make sense, just drop it before you leave the room. Please make dua for me and my family. And inshallah, may Allah bless all of you and your families. But the summary of it all is to be true to the Quran and to be true to this da'wah that the Prophet ﷺ left this world upon. We have to invest in each other. That's all. Not everyone has the patience for night worship. Not everyone has the ability to come to lessons like this. But if they say, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadun Rasulullah, we have to make belonging to us meaningful. And the sunnah is the widest possible net. We have to cast that wide net for everybody to the best of our abilities. That's our jihad, if you like. And this really is a jihad, because if it works, it's a civilizational establishment. And that's how Muslims have always conquered conquerors. Whether it's your Mongols or whoever it is, how do you conquer the conqueror? You just make your community strong. And you make the logic of belonging so undeniable that it grows with its own logic. That's all. And the Sharia is the way. This is my personal belief. Allahu A'lam. جزاكم الله خيرا. بارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.